Stop, right now. Everything you believe about your potential is based on a carefully fabricated illusion. The most disturbing and simultaneously liberating truth you will face today is this. You already possess within you all the qualities you admire in those you consider superior to yourself. This contradiction has been the greatest obstacle to your advancement, for while you observe the giants in your field with admiration, they look at themselves with the unshakable certainty that no one can surpass them. Most spend their entire lives waiting for permission to be extraordinary, failing to realize that this authorization will never come from an external source. In the next few moments, I will present to you a transformative principle that has been the guarded secret of all individuals who have achieved greatness in any field of human endeavor. You are about to discover why certain men and women, seemingly ordinary, rise to extraordinary heights while others, often more talented and privileged, remain in the obscurity of mediocrity. This is not a question of luck, opportunity, or connections, though these factors may exert their influence. The real differentiator, the decisive element that separates the extraordinary from the ordinary, lies in a single principle that, once understood and applied, will irrevocably transform your reality. By mastering the art of acting as if you were the best, no one is better than you, you will unleash forces in your subconscious mind that will completely recalibrate your self-assessment and, consequently, how the world responds to you. Imagine for a moment that at this very instant you could adopt the mindset, posture, decisions, and actions of the most successful person in your field. Not as an exercise in fantasy, but as a deliberate practice of neural reprogramming. What would happen if, for the next 30 days, you refused to acknowledge any internal limitation and acted with absolute certainty of your excellence? This is not an exercise in self-deception, but the application of a fundamental psychological law. Your subconscious mind cannot distinguish between vividly imagined reality and actual physical experience. When you act as if you were the best, you create new neural patterns that with consistent repetition become your new operational reality. Stop, reflect for a moment. What would you do differently today if you had the absolute certainty that you are the best in your field? How would you walk? How would you talk? What decisions would you make? What calculated risks would you accept? The transformation, I promise, will not occur overnight, but will begin the moment you decide to act as if you were already the person you aspire to become. This is the key that has remained hidden in plain sight, mentioned in fragments by the great philosophers and masters, but rarely understood in its transformative entirety. Throughout history, the true masters of any discipline share a common characteristic. Long before external recognition arrived, they had already internalized their own greatness. They act from an inner knowledge, an unshakable certainty that their rightful place is at the top. This is not arrogance, it is clarity. It is not inflated ego, it is precise self-knowledge. It is the difference between one who waits for the world to confirm their worth and one who defines their own worth regardless of external validation. The principle of acting as if you were the best transcends the simple repetition of positive affirmations. It is a fundamental realignment of your identity, a recalibration of your expectations and actions. When you act as if you were the best, you awaken in yourself behavior patterns that naturally manifest excellence. Observe the true masters in any field, be it in the arts, business, sports, or science. They are not paralyzed by constant doubt or debilitating comparison. They operate from a platform of certainty, not because they are immune to failure, but because they recognize that failure is merely data, feedback on the path to mastery. The application of this principle occurs on 3 distinct levels. At the physical level, you adopt the posture, movements, and expressions of one who has achieved mastery. At the emotional level, you cultivate the emotional states associated with excellence, unwavering confidence, focused determination, and unbreakable resilience. At the intellectual level, you adopt the thought patterns, questioning and problem-solving characteristic of individuals of extraordinary performance. This is not a new principle. The ancient Stoics understood it. Shakespeare captured it when he wrote, "Assume a virtue if you have it not." Modern psychology confirms it through research on neural plasticity and the power of behavior to shape brain biochemistry. When you act as if you were the best, you are not merely projecting an image to the external world, you are rewriting your internal programming. The consistent repetition of this behavior, sustained by conscious intention, eventually dissolves the distinction between acting as if and being. You have been programmed, since childhood, to seek external validation, to wait for someone in a position of authority to tell you that you are good enough. This programming is so deep that most never question its validity. As a result, entire lives are lived in the shadow of true potential while we wait for recognition that paradoxically will only come after we stop waiting for it. The principle of acting as if repositions the source of validation. Instead of seeking external confirmation of your excellence, you take control of the narrative. By doing so, you alter the fundamental dynamics of how the world responds to you. Consider, for a moment, the power of the mental state. If you enter a situation doubting yourself, hesitant, your body will unconsciously transmit these signals. Your posture, tone of voice, facial expression, all will communicate your uncertainty. In contrast, when you act as if you were the best, that certainty radiates from every aspect of your presence, magnetizing opportunities and connections that remain invisible to those trapped in doubt. This principle transcends mere motivational technique. It is the application of a natural law. Your external reality will inevitably adjust to reflect your inner conviction, whether that conviction is one of limitation or of unlimited possibility. Research on the placebo effect demonstrates the power of belief to alter physical realities. Patients improve not due to actual medical intervention, but because they believe in the efficacy of the treatment. If the mind can heal the body through belief, what else can it accomplish when programmed with the absolute conviction of excellence? The practice of acting as if you were the best establishes a new reference point for your identity. Excellence ceases to be a distant goal and becomes your default operational state. Decisions are no longer filtered through the lens of inadequacy, but through the certainty of your ability to master any challenge. However, let me clarify, acting as if you were the best does not mean escaping into a world of fantasy or denying areas that need development. On the contrary, it is recognizing your unlimited potential while working consistently to manifest it. It is the acceptance of total responsibility for your growth without transferring power to external circumstances. The world does not reward those who silently know their worth. It rewards those who act from that knowledge. History is replete with unrecognized geniuses whose potential remained latent because they failed to act in accordance with their ability. Will you continue in the audience of your own life, applauding the success of others while your greatness remains dormant within you? Or will you make, today, the decision to act as if you were the best, knowing that no one is fundamentally better than you, just more consistent in applying this principle? Are you ready to cross the threshold from potential to manifestation? Allow me to introduce Henry Ford, a man who revolutionized global industry and forever transformed the way we live. Before becoming the industrial titan we know, Ford was considered merely an eccentric mechanic with impractical ideas. The difference between the unknown Ford and the Ford who changed the world did not lie in his technical ability, but in his unshakable conviction. When confronted with the impossibility of creating a V8 engine cast in a single block, something the best engineers of the time categorically declared impossible, Ford simply instructed his team, produce it anyway. For months, the engineers returned empty-handed, stating that the task was impossible. Ford's response remained unchanged, produce it anyway, and eventually they did. What separated Ford from others was not superior technical knowledge, but his refusal to accept limitations that others took as absolute truth. He acted as if he were the best, as if he were capable of accomplishing the impossible, and that unbreakable conviction manifested the corresponding reality. What most people fail to realize is that acting as if you were the best is not a superficial motivational technique. It is a fundamental psychological law that governs how your brain processes reality. When you consistently assume the behavior, posture, and decisions of someone of supreme excellence, your brain cannot distinguish between the acting and the reality. It begins to create new neural connections that over time transform simulation into authenticity. Imagine for a moment that you could instantly access the mindset of absolute certainty that true masters in any field possess. You would see that they don't wait until they feel confident to act. They act with confidence, and the feeling follows the action. It is precisely this inversion of the conventional sequence that represents the first counterintuitive insight. Confidence does not precede action. Action precedes confidence. Most people wait to feel confident before acting as someone confident. This is the first great mistake. True confidence is the result of acting as if you already possessed this quality. Each time you act with certainty, Even when you internally feel doubt, you strengthen this new identity. It is a process of transformation from the outside in, a technique employed by every individual who has achieved true greatness. The second counterintuitive insight is that the subconscious mind cannot process negations. When you tell yourself, "Don't fail," your mind processes fail. When you say, "Don't be afraid," your mind registers "be afraid." This is why the technique of acting as if is so powerful. It completely reorients your mind's focus from limitations to possibilities. Instead of focusing on what you want to avoid, the technique directs your focus to what you want to manifest. You don't avoid being mediocre, you embody excellence. This shift in perspective, seemingly subtle, completely reconfigures your nervous system and, consequently, your actions and results. The third insight, perhaps the most revolutionary, is that absolute certainty in your abilities is not the result of accumulated successes, it is the precursor to them. It is the unshakable conviction in your ability, before any external evidence, that attracts the necessary circumstances to manifest that reality. Think of the great innovators in history: Tesla, Einstein, Mozart, Jobs. What united them was not just exceptional talent, but the absolute conviction in the importance of their vision, long before external recognition. They did not wait for the world to validate their potential, they acted from the inner certainty of their unique capacity. The real enemy we must face is not external competition, but internal doubt, the persistent voice that questions our ability, that reminds us of past failures and projects' future limitations. This is the true battle that must be won, and the technique of acting as if is the most powerful weapon in this combat. When you act as if you were the best, you directly challenge the limiting programming you've accumulated throughout life. Each act of supreme confidence is an act of rebellion against the restrictive beliefs that have been implanted in your mind by circumstances, experiences, and well-intentioned people, but limited in their vision. Like a seed that contains all the potential of a majestic tree, you possess within you all the capacity necessary to achieve supreme excellence in your chosen field. The technique of acting as if is not creating something that doesn't exist. It is releasing what is already present, removing the layers of doubt, fear, and negative conditioning that obscure your true potential. Consider this powerful metaphor. Michelangelo's sculpture of David already existed within the block of marble before he touched it. The sculptor's job was not to create David, but to remove everything that was not David. Similarly, your greatness already exists within you. The process of acting as if you were the best simply removes what is not consistent with this fundamental truth. Most people live their lives as supporting actors in a play written by others. They follow scripts elaborated by social expectations, family conditioning, and perceived limitations. Acting as if you were the best means assuming the role of protagonist and author of your own story. This is not an escapist fantasy, but a strategic repositioning of your identity. It is recognizing that you, like every human being, are fundamentally a creative being, constantly shaping your reality through your beliefs, expectations, and action. The question is not whether you are creating your reality. You are, inevitably. The question is whether you are creating consciously from a position of personal power or unconsciously from inherited limitation. The fourth counterintuitive insight is that failure, when experienced by someone who acts as if they were the best, is fundamentally different from failure experienced by someone trapped in doubt. For the former, failure is merely information, valuable data that informs strategic adjustments. For the latter, failure is confirmation of inadequacy, evidence that reinforces the limiting identity. Two individuals can face exactly the same setback, but their interpretations, and consequently their subsequent actions, will be radically different depending on their fundamental self-image. The one who acts as if they were the best will see the obstacle as temporary and specific. The one who doubts themselves will see the same obstacle as permanent and comprehensive. By practicing the principle of acting as if you were the best, you alter not only your external response to circumstances, but your internal interpretation of them. This is the true alchemy of personal transformation, the ability to transmute experiences that for others would be devastating into opportunities for growth and advancement. The fifth insight, often neglected but deeply powerful, is that acting as if you were the best is not an exercise in isolation, but in connection. True masters in any field not only recognize their own excellence, but are able to appreciate and learn from the excellence of others. Insecurity creates petty competition. True confidence allows generous collaboration. When you act from a place of internal abundance, there is no need to diminish others to elevate yourself. Your certainty in your own excellence allows you to celebrate the greatness of others, knowing that excellence in others does not diminish, but expands the possibilities for all. As you advance in the practice of acting as if you were the best, you will observe a transformation not only in your self-image, but in how the world responds to you. Doors that previously seemed closed will begin to open. People who previously seemed inaccessible will become allies and mentors. Opportunities that previously seemed scarce will arise with surprising frequency. This is not coincidence or luck. It is the natural manifestation of the law of correspondence, the principle that your outer world will inevitably align with your dominant inner reality. When you fundamentally transform how you see yourself, you inexorably transform how the world sees and responds to you. We now arrive at a crucial revelation. The practice of acting as if you were the best is not merely a technique for achieving external success. It is a path to inner freedom. It is liberating yourself from the prison of others' judgment, external approval, and constant validation. When you ground your value in your own assessment rather than the opinion of others, you achieve a state of freedom that few experience. This psychological autonomy is perhaps the most precious result of the practice, transcending any material achievements or recognition it may generate. The truth that few understand is that acting as if you were the best is not an act of deceiving the world or yourself. It is an act of alignment with your essential nature. Beneath the layers of conditioning, doubt, and fear lies your true identity, a being of unlimited potential, infinite capacity, and inexhaustible possibilities. The practice does not create this reality. It reveals it. Stop right now and consider this. Everything we have discussed so far has been preparation for the most profound revelation. What I am about to share transcends techniques, strategies, and methods. It reaches the fundamental core of human transformation. Here is the supreme truth that unifies all previous principles. Acting as if you were the best is not just a strategy for success. It is the recognition of a deeper reality about your true nature. The greatest deception we perpetuate in our society is that greatness is reserved for a chosen few, those blessed with extraordinary talents or exceptional circumstances. This is the most pernicious and debilitating lie that you must completely reject if you wish to awaken your dormant potential. Greatness is not something you need to acquire. It is something you must liberate. It is encoded in your mental, emotional, and spiritual structure, waiting to be activated not through search but through recognition. This moment represents the bifurcation point in your journey, the decisive instant that will forever separate those who merely contemplate excellence from those who embody it as their fundamental identity. The decision before you is simultaneously simple and monumental. Will you continue to live according to the limitations imposed by past conditioning, or will you assume from this moment on total authority over your potential, acting as the living embodiment of excellence in your field? This is not a choice to be contemplated indefinitely. It is a call to immediate action. Each moment you spend hesitating at the frontier between mediocrity and mastery is a lost moment that will never return. Think of the giants who transformed the world. Carnegie, Rockefeller, Edison, Einstein, Curie, Gandhi, Mandela, Jobs. What differentiated them was not merely talent, intelligence, or favorable circumstance. It was their unwavering willingness to act from an internal vision of their capacity that transcended any external evidence. Edison, after more than 10,000 failed attempts to create a viable electric light bulb, declared that he had not failed. He had simply discovered 10,000 ways that did not work. This is not mere persistence. It is the manifestation of an identity grounded in the absolute certainty of eventual success. When you act as if you were the best, you access a state of consciousness that few experience, a state where limitations do not dictate your possibilities, but merely inform your strategic adjustments. It is the difference between being a passive object of circumstances and being the sovereign architect of your reality. This principle transcends material success, though it inevitably manifests it. Its true power lies in the inner transformation, the fundamental change in how you relate to yourself and consequently to the world. Now, I demand that you make a decision. Not tomorrow, not when circumstances are ideal, not when you feel ready. Now, in this moment, you are being called to cross the threshold between potential and achievement, between contemplation and manifestation, between aspiration and embodiment. The decision before you is not whether you can become the best. It is whether you will recognize that in your deepest essence, you already possess all the qualities necessary for mastery. The question is not capability, but commitment, not potential, but expression. Those who understand and apply this principle form a silent brotherhood of achievers, individuals who have transcended the limitations of conventional identity and accessed higher dimensions of human possibility. They walk among us, seemingly ordinary in many aspects, but fundamentally different in their relationship with reality. They do not ask permission to be extraordinary. They assume this quality as their birthright. They do not await external validation. They move with an inner certainty that magnetizes recognition and opportunity. They are not paralyzed by the fear of failure. They redefine failure as an essential component of the mastery process. You are being invited to join this brotherhood, not through external selection, but through your own sovereign choice. The only requirement is your willingness to completely abandon the limiting identity you have inhabited and assume, without reservation or hesitation, the identity of one who embodies incomparable excellence. This transition does not occur gradually. It is a quantum shift in consciousness, a fundamental reorientation that happens in the moment you make the irrevocable choice to no longer tolerate mediocrity in any aspect of your life. The world does not respond to what you desire, hope for, or plan. It responds to what you embody. When you embody excellence, the universe conspires to confirm that reality, not because there is some mystical force working in your favor, but because your perception, interpretation, and response to circumstances are fundamentally altered. You begin to see opportunities where others see obstacles, possibilities where others see limitations, resources where others see scarcity. This is not a distortion of reality, but an expansion of your perception to include dimensions that remain invisible to those trapped in restrictive paradigms. The application of this principle requires constant vigilance. The world is programmed to reinforce mediocrity, to push you back to the comfort of familiar limitations. Every aspect of society, from educational systems to social interactions, is structured to keep you within the parameters of conventional possibility. Acting as if you were the best is an act of peaceful revolution against this collective programming. It is declaring independence from external expectations and assuming total authority over your development and expression. This revolution begins with a decision, but is sustained through consistent practice. Each thought, word, and action must be filtered through the question, is this consistent with supreme excellence? When you face a challenge, ask, how would the best version of me respond to this? When confronted with an opportunity, question, what would one who embodies mastery do in this situation? These questions reorient your consciousness, moving it away from habitual patterns of conditioned response and directing it towards superior modes of perception and action. The transformation you seek is not at some distant point in the future. It is available in this moment through the decision to act from an identity of absolute excellence. The crucial leverage point is not your external circumstances, but your internal orientation. When you fundamentally change how you see yourself, you inevitably change how you act. When you change how you act, you inexorably change the results you produce. When you change the results you produce, you inevitably transform your reality. This is the transcendent power of acting as if you were the best. It is not merely a technique for achieving success, but a means of completely rewriting the parameters of your experience. Consider this truth. In every moment of your life, you are creating not just your immediate future, but the legacy you will leave long after your departure from this physical plane. The question is not whether you will leave a legacy, it is what the nature of that legacy will be. Will it be the legacy of someone who lived within the bounds of conventional possibility, who sought security and predictability at the expense of full expression? Or will it be the legacy of someone who dared to transcend these limitations, who committed to excellence not as a distant goal, but as a present reality? This choice belongs exclusively to you. No one can make it on your behalf, just as no one can live your life for you. It is the supreme exercise of your free will, the ultimate expression of your sovereign authority over your existence. The call to action I present is not for you to become something you are not. It is for you to recognize and express what you have always been, underlying the layers of conditioning, doubt, and fear. From this moment on, commit to acting in every area of your life as if you were the living embodiment of excellence, not as a temporary exercise, not as a situational technique, but as a consistent expression of your true nature. When you make this irrevocable choice, something extraordinary happens. The distance between acting as if and being collapses. What began as deliberate practice becomes spontaneous expression. What initially required conscious effort becomes your default operational nature. This is the deepest alchemy of human transformation, the transmutation of deliberate behavior into authentic identity. The greatness you admire in others is not their exclusive quality. It is the reflection of potentials that exist equally in you, waiting for expression. When you act as if you were the best, you are not imitating or simulating. You are accessing a dimension of yourself that has always existed, but remained dormant. At this moment, make a solemn commitment to yourself. From this day forward, you will accept nothing less than excellence in your thoughts, words, and actions. You will filter every decision through the lens of the highest possible standard. You will relate to the world not from what you have been, but from what you choose to be. This commitment is not to an external goal, but to an internal truth. It is not a promise made to the world, but a declaration to your own consciousness. It is the recognition that the true purpose of your life is not to achieve predetermined goals, but to fully express the extraordinary qualities encoded in your essential nature. Act as if it were impossible to fail, and so it shall be. This is not mere inspirational rhetoric. It is a precise statement of how human consciousness operates. When you completely eliminate failure as a conceptual possibility, you reconfigure your nervous system to process experiences in fundamentally different ways from those who remain vulnerable to doubt. Excellence is not a destination, it is orientation. It is not a final state to be achieved, but a direction to be consistently maintained. It is a commitment to perpetual growth, continuous refinement, and ceaseless expansion. When you act as if you were the best, you establish a high standard not only for your external achievements, but for your internal evolution. You become simultaneously the work and the artist, constantly refining and elevating your expression. This is the truth that masters of all ages have understood. The journey to mastery is not linear, but spiral. Each circuit of the spiral represents a higher level of understanding, capability, and expression. There is no end point, only perpetual expansion of possibilities. The choice before you now will determine not only the trajectory of your immediate future, but the quality and impact of your entire existence. It is a choice between passive acceptance of inherited limitations and active creation of expanded possibilities. Choose to act as if you were the best, not because you need to prove something to the world, but because it is the most authentic expression of who you really are, underlying the layers of conditioning. Choose excellence not as a goal to be pursued, but as a standard to be lived. You become what you believe yourself to be.